Good afternoon, all. Welcome to our regional forum on press in distress. Will independent journalism survive in Southeast Asia? I'm Vachla Naidu from the Center for Independent Journalism. We are very happy to be part of this initiative, which was actually mooted by our fellow Malaysian cohort, the Freedom Film Network. Together with us, we also have the following partners who have come together as organizers, of course, all filled with immense energy and hope. We have Gerakan Media Merdeka, also from Malaysia. From Indonesia, our partners are Aliansi Journalists Independent, AJI, and our partners from Philippines, Dakila, Active Vista, and the Rappler. As one of our co-organizing partner, Alia said, course, it's Maria Ressa and 1,000 cut. This was actually the impetus and the rallying point which brought all of us together to use the power of this documentary, 1,000 cut, in creating this necessary momentum to take our discourse forward in combating issues regarding state-sanctioned attacks on media, and of course, in pushing forward a very progressive right to information regime in the Southeast Asia region. The online screening the last few days and the regional forum today is meant to set the scene and bring awareness on the current challenges faced by the news organizations and journalists in each of our respective countries as well as within the region. We hope it will create the necessary dialogue and collaborative actions on matters of public interest. It is critical for the audience and the public to appreciate the crucial role that journalists play in a democracy and, of course, to support media freedom. We all have a role to play. We see this process as initial seeds which will grow and evolve into continued solidarity and commitments from our partner organizations and other stakeholders in the region. In the context of Malaysia, we see this moving forward and strengthening the ongoing partnership we have at both local and regional level. At a start, as a follow-up from this, in Malaysia, we would also be hosting further screenings in November to commemorate the International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists. This also includes continued engagement with media, young journalists and students in contextualizing their roles and locating it within the changing and increasingly challenging environment. On this note, we look forward to a fruitful, and I'm sure it's going to be power-filled discussion today. I now hand it over to Pak Sasmito, our representative from Indonesia. Over to you, Pak.
Thanks, Wasla. Good afternoon. Thank you to Netherlands Embassies Indonesia, the Philippines, and Malaysia, and the Raoul Wallenberg Institute for supporting this event. We know that democracy in Southeast Asia, including Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, is decreasing. Leaders make policies without listening to people's aspiration, and the press is increasingly restrict its social control function. It can be seen from the violence against journalists that are allowed and the journalists being criminalized. But journalists must not be subdued because journalists must guard democracy by becoming watchdog, exposing dirty practice by leaders, abuse of power, and policies that harm the people, as Maria Ressa did in highlight Duterte policies. An anti-democratic leader who is not much different from the smiling Indonesia, President Joko Widodo. In addition, the leader of the Philippines and Indonesia are two examples of leaders who also beat the drum of the war on drugs. The Philippines looks more extreme because of the many casualties, while in Indonesia, many people are imprisoned for drugs, even though we know that the victims are users, while the drug dealers are almost unknown. So we know who this war is actually for. Plus, I think that watching the movie together is the start of a good collaboration for Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines in fighting for democracy and press freedom in Southeast Asia. Such collaboration must continue in various forms. For example, making joint report between journalists in Southeast Asia, or conducting joint campaigns in fighting for press freedom and democracy, or relaxing activity that have an impact on democracy and press freedom, such as watching movie together as we do. Thank you. Happy discussing. And now I invite Lenny Velasco, our country partner from the Philippines, to continue to share about this initiative.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Dakila and its Activista Center are very honored to co-organize this forum with our partners from Malaysia, Indonesia, and of course, our longtime ally, Rappler from the Philippines. The state of press freedom in the Philippines has many fronts. On one hand, the silencing of media through the legal cases filed against Rappler and Maria Ressa and the shutdown of ABS-CBN, one of the largest networks in the Philippines. And on the other hand, there's the killings and harassment of journalists to instill a climate of fear. More so, the massive disinformation and orchestrated troll attacks in social media creates an atmosphere that muddles truth and facts and enables censorship. We know that these attacks are not unique to the Philippines, but also mirrored in our neighboring countries. Dakila and Activista believes that initiatives like this raise public consciousness regarding the issues surrounding press freedom, relate how these issues affect the wider public, and contribute to addressing them. In these crucial times when the attacks against press freedom and freedom of expression in the region worsen, now more than ever, we also need to strengthen our collaboration to stand up for and with the heralds of truth, the independent media. So at this point, let me now run through our program today for everyone. So the first part of our forum is the experience sharing of our panelists on the regional and local attacks they are facing. Our moderator will introduce our panelists in a while. For the second part, we'll have a Q&A, a question and answer session where the audiences, you guys, can directly discuss with our panelists. And finally, we'll end our forum today with a discussion on how we can forge further regional collaboration to support freedom locally and in the region. Now that we've got that settled, we know what we can expect from today's forum. Let me now introduce you to our moderator for today. Our moderator is an award-winning journalist, impact producer, and co-founder of The Fort, an investigative and impact media startup dedicated to defending social justice through journalism. He's also an Obama Foundation leader, an Acumen Fellow, UK International Leaders Program Fellow, and Pulitzer Center Advisory Committee member, and a consultant for the UNICEF. We're so proud and we're so very lucky to have with us today, Mr. Ian Yee. So take it away, Ian.
Thank you so much, Lenny. Sorry for that very long introduction that you had to make, but thank you so much for that. It's so great to see so many names in the participants list. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ian, like I mentioned earlier. Just really quickly to make sure everyone's comfortable using Zoom, especially the chat, because we want this to be interactive. I want you to put a number into the chat box, a number between 1 to 5. 1 meaning you're not feeling too great today. 5 meaning you're like super excited, totally amped for this. So number between 1 to 5 in the chat, please. I see a 4. Okay, 5, 4, 2.5. Lots of 4s and 5s. Somebody is like a whole bunch of 5s. Okay, Joe. Hi, Joe. Great. I think everyone's in a good mood. Everyone's excited to hear from our amazing panelists today. So thank you all so much for being here. Those of you who are kind of like still 2 and 3, hopefully as we go along, you're going to get a bit more excited and you're going to learn a lot. I know I surely will, because we've admired Maria's work and the film is amazing. So yeah, I'm going to do another quick icebreaker question though. I want you guys to type in the chat your name, tell us where you're from, and which scene or quote from the film inspired you the most. All right, which scene or quote from the movie 1,000 Cuts inspired you the most? I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about that. The one where she goes, "We will hold the line." Yeah, oh my God, chills, right? Like, oh my God, that's so amazing. Okay, I can start off. Like for me, my favorite scene is the one where Maria is in a hotel room with her sister, and the sister is just like in tears because Maria says like, I'm ready. I'm prepared. If I have to go to jail, I will. And while the sister is like, so distraught, Maria's there just casually packing her suitcase, and she's like, I don't understand this conversation. Why are we doing this? And I thought it just said so much about Maria's strength of character, right? Like, just that thought didn't phase her at all. And she's just like, I'm just packing my suitcase. So yeah, I thought that was great. And I see some nice ones as well. Happy says Maria's sister trying to make Maria wear like that particular dress. That was hilarious. I see a quote here as well, Katrina. Hold the line. Yes, the part where she says hold the line. That's amazing. As Lena says, don't be afraid, because if you don't use your rights, you will lose them. Chills, definitely chills all over. Like that whole movie for me was like lots of chills. So for those of you who haven't seen the film, thank you so much for putting all those messages in the chat. We don't have time to go through all of them, but I'm sure Maria, everybody involved in the production of the film, they see it, they see your lovely messages, so thank you for that. But if you haven't seen the film, we're gonna play a quick trailer, and here's the link. I think, Shar, can you put the link for them to actually watch the film? I think you can watch it until tomorrow. So there's gonna be a link there. Thank you so much. And now we're gonna play a trailer to convince all of you who haven't watched it, this is why you should watch it.
Mr. President, is it important that people be afraid of you? Fear.
Yes.
Hello and welcome. I'm Maria Ressa.
Maria Ressa carries the torch of press freedom in a country held in thrall by a populist president.
It started with the drug war.
Do not do drugs, because I will kill you.
President Duterte began his administration with the drug list.
This is the drug industry of the Philippines.
He showed everyone a list. People on that list started dying.
I'm telling the Filipino people it's gonna be bloody.
We demanded the government be held accountable.
Duterte was annoyed by our reporting.
You are a fake news outlet. They will be allowed to criticize us, but you go to jail for your crime.
We started getting attacked on social media. The government created disinformation networks, so people have no idea what the truth is. I was getting an average of 90 hate messages per hour.
We don't even know whether we can trust the police to protect us.
Just because you're a journalist, so you're exempted from assassination.
We didn't even realize how dangerous it is for you.
Why are you crying?
Because I'm scared for you.
Maria Ressa has been arrested.
The charges against Ressa were aimed at intimidating those who challenged Duterte's rule.
So why should you care about what happens in the Philippines? They test the tactics of how to manipulate America in our country. If it works, they port it over to the rest of the world.
Maria Ressa was one of 4 journalists named as Time Magazine's Person of the Year.
Maria won't be afraid. I'm afraid for her.
What we're seeing is death by 1,000 cuts. Little cuts of Philippine democracy. We will not duck. We will not hide. We will hold the line.
Wow. Yeah, still gives me chills. And yes, that song, right? The theme song, that's like 100% fire. Anyway, thank you so much for playing that. Now I'd like to introduce our panelists for today. First of all, we have Stephen Gan, the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Malaysiakini. Hi, Stephen. We have Arif Zulkifl, CEO of Tempo Media. And of course, we have Maria Ressa, co-founder and CEO of Rappler. Hi, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you. So just a couple of quick house rules. If you have any questions throughout this conversation, please feel free to put them in the chat. There's someone who's compiling them, and we'll get to them in the Q&A session in about right after we have a quick conversation. Please stay muted. And later in the Q&A, if you'd like to ask a question, you can use the raise hand function, and we'll be able to pick you out, and you can unmute and ask your questions directly to our panel. But of course, I think the first question has to go to Maria. Such a pleasure to have you with us. Can you tell us what's happened since that final scene in the film? Or are there any updates for us?
Several. The coronavirus, right? Like it happened. I mean, huge, blew the world
I mean, we all went into lockdown. Actually, the Sundance Film Festival was where that film premiered. So we had gone there along with Pia and Rambo. And then shortly after we came back, we had just shown the film here, the last public gathering that we had in March. What's happened since then? I had 2 more arrest warrants. So in like a little less than 2 years, I had the Philippine government filed 10 arrest warrants against me, 9 cases against Rappler. Sorry, 9 cases against Rappler, 10 arrest warrants. So I had 10, Rappler had 9, I had 1 more. And then here's the good part, right? So that was by 20, you saw the end where Ray and I were convicted for cyber libel. I was convicted for a story I didn't write, edit, or supervise at a time when the law we supposedly violated wasn't in effect yet. So it was really legal acrobatics. And since then, after that, I had 1 more arrest warrant, a 9th, and then the 10th arrest warrant early this year, January. But in the last 3 months, 2 of the 9 cases that we had faced were dismissed. So we have 7 more cases left. And I guess the last thing that's very personal is that since the August last year, the government, the courts I have to ask for court permission to travel. And I had approval from 6 of 7 of the judges, the cases that had been there. But for 4 different times I tried to travel, the Court of Appeals said no. So I'm fighting for my rights. I have since elevated that to the Supreme Court, and we'll see, right? I saw Stephen in court, so we're all in court in different ways.
Yeah, and we'll get to that as well, Stephen's case as well. But just another question for you before that. So the film really breaks down like all the different ways that media is oppressed in different parts of the world, right? They were that really intense. There were the legal and financial threats you just mentioned, as well as the state level kind of state sanctioned threats. Do you see similar patterns or trends around the world in terms of media oppression?
Absolutely. And it starts with social media, the use of social media, how budding autocrats and budding dictators exploit the algorithms of American social media platforms to attack journalists, because in the end, if you say a lie a million times, it becomes a fact. You've heard me say this if you watch the film. But when lies are facts, what happens to facts in these algorithms that reward anger, conspiracy theories, hate? These platforms that distribute news, Facebook is the world's largest distributor of news today. These platforms are actually biased against facts. They're biased against journalists. So this is, I think, an existential problem. This year, Oxford University's Computational Propaganda Research Project said that in 81 countries around the world, cheap armies on social media are rolling back democracy. But think about it like this, right? If you don't have facts, you can't have truth. If you don't have truth, you can't have trust. Everything in our society functions on trust, right? If you don't have these 3, you can't have democracy. You can't have shared realities to debate these huge questions we're facing: coronavirus, climate change. So I think this is this existential moment, and all of Silicon Valley's sins are flowing to our countries, and we bear the greatest brunt, journalists in the global South, largely because our institutions are weaker.
And you mentioned technology, right? That plays a huge part in that. So how can the media industry respond? How can news organizations and civil society organizations respond to this massive global threat?
I think you're seeing it, and it's delayed. There's a delayed response because it's a new world, old power. And this was really, I began realizing this in 2018. Governments and states in democratic countries that should be regulating the technology didn't understand what it was doing. And then, let's call them old power, right? Geopolitical power plays. And we saw this first come out in the Ukraine in 2014. But I would say 2014 was a critical year because in Indonesia,
Jokowi was elected. And it was up to that one weekend with that huge photo in the stadium that was on social media, right? And Prabowo, who was fighting for the presidency, you didn't know until the last minute who would win or lose. But again, it was a social media driven thing. So in 2014, Modi took office in India, right? So the Ukraine, that was where we saw Russian disinformation really come out and change reality in the real world. And then that Russian kind of military tactic using information operations then was targeted in 2016 to the United States. And that's now fully documented. And what we saw here in the Philippines, our elections in 2016 was kind of like the first domino that began to fall, because a month later you had Brexit. That's been cataloged, also chronicled by Carol Cadwallader, a British investigative journalist who broke the Cambridge Analytica story. And then, all the way down, Catalonia, then the US election of President Trump. So yeah, it is happening everywhere around the world. I think that we have to come together. I guess so here's the last part. And I saw Stephen had this quote, right? In the end, our business models are dead. Advertising is dead as a business model. And the social media platforms, the tech platforms have fine-tuned it to a point that it can micro-target. It is cheaper for an advertiser to do that. And what that means is that news organizations have to find an alternative business model or we die.
Right. So now over to Stephen and Arif. Thanks for that. So maybe we'll start with Stephen. Have you experienced similar attacks or threats to press freedom in your country, in Malaysia?
Yes, but I do not envy, the Maria situation. We do receive a number of charges, but not as many as Maria. But those comparing really. I was watching that the documentary. I thought it was excellent. I saw that there was a threat by some of the Facebookers who came to the office, and I guess we have similar kind of experience when you have a bunch of protesters outside the office. For Malaysiakini, we had a group of, I think, about 500 to 1,000 people out there. They're in red shirts. These are right-wing pro-UPNO supporters, and they threatened to destroy our building. So I think it's similar in terms of the threat, and it's there is an underlying threat of violence there. And I think it is getting worse in that sense. There is not just Malaysia, Philippines. I could see that happening in Indonesia as well, and of course not to mention Myanmar. That was they are facing a terrible situation there, especially journalists. They've been jailed, and many of them are going into exile and in hiding. So all that we are fighting a battle that is increasingly more challenging in many ways. In the old days, we were fighting against men and women in military uniform, and sometimes men and women in business suits, and at times, there are men in religious garbs, mostly men. I think they're exclusively men. But now we are fighting against men and women who are writing computer codes, and that is an additional challenge. It makes it a little bit more harder, definitely. But I think, as Maria said, we hold the line.
Yeah, and Arif, how do these threats and attacks on press freedom manifest in Indonesia?
Yeah, we have plenty of that kind of attack, but I believe that not as big as what happened with Maria. Of course, I have to mention two cases. The first one is when a journalist from a small media in South Kalimantan was sentenced for 3 months because he wrote something ethically, according to your press council, ethically error. And in Indonesia, there is a press council that is, I think it's very strong. So when every cases that people report the media or the journalists, it should be tackled by press council first, and then the police cannot proceed it. But in terms of his name is Diananta, the journalist, it's already settled in press council, but the police supporting by a big name proceed that cases, and Diananta was arrested and sentenced for 3 months. And then the second one is attacking to the Tempo, my company journalist in Surabaya, when he had trying to interview one of the suspicious one who's avoiding the tax in Surabaya. And then he was a coach, the cellular phone was taken and kidnapped for 2 or 3 hours. And the cases is already gone to the police, and someone who's the perpetrators is in court right now. Of course, the biggest one I have to say is the demonstration, a big demonstration that was held in Jakarta 2019, when the government and the GPR legislative put the ratification of the job creation law or Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja and the revision of the Commission Eradication Corruption or KPK. There's a big demonstration during that day, and the protesters of both laws, student, activists, academics, and journalists were persecuted. Their personal identities were shared on the social media. As usual, their homes were visited by food delivery men demanding payment for orders made by strangers. Also, doxing combined with ad hominems, the work of journalists who say was held back in the grade when he was in school was seen as a lousy because his educational background. So, supported by 100,000 of accounts, whether it's real or just bought, the reporters would be bullied endlessly until they feel ashamed, apologize, delete the story, or give up and refuse to write the story in question. So hacking and other effort to digitally deleted news have also been experienced in mass media in Indonesia. Most vulnerable of being hacked are WhatsApp chat groups. Hacking is done to damage the website, so the public is cannot access the website. The deleting of news carry out at night until early in the morning when the media technology officer are asleep. I believe that without serious resistance, the illegal deletion of news can harm the public and give birth to the dark businesses of erasing digital news. So, you know, there is a debate about the public right to know versus the right to be forgotten. It's still.
Sorry, Arif, I'm not. I think we lost you for a bit. But maybe we can go back to Stephen really quickly. You had faced some legal, financial threats as well, right? You managed to get a lot of support from the public in Malaysia. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think we were hit with a contempt of court charge early this year, or was it this year? Or no, it was sometime last year. Next time flies. It was just basically a case of, you know, we knew that they were checking our website and looking for a way for them to take action against us. Since that they couldn't find anything wrong with our news reports, or they decided to look through our readers' comments and decided to charge, to investigate a number of the comments where it sort of disparate the judiciary. So the Attorney General filed a charge against Malaysiakini and against me personally, and we were, they went straight to the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the country, and that there is a problem in the sense that there is no way that you can actually seek for an appeal later on. But we are, fighting for we're asking for a review of that decision. But anyway, so long story short, we were found guilty. Not me personally, but Malaysiakini, and the prosecution was actually asked for about 200,000 as fine against Malaysiakini. The 7 judges on the panel came back with $500,000 fine. So that was unusual, unexpected. We thought that given the fact that the prosecution did not really actually ask for that much, so immediately, good thing was that we were prepared for that. We knew that most likely they would find us guilty, and most likely there would be a fine that we have to pay. So we are all ready for that. And immediately when the decision was announced, we immediately called for for our supporters to help us raise that money. And I was surprised by the speed of that. We managed to raise that money, which is about 220,000 US dollars within 4 or 5 hours. So that was great. I think I was stunned by that. I think I was surprised. As I say, I was surprised twice on that day. First was the hefty fine on Malaysiakini, and the second surprise, and it was a good surprise, that we managed to raise that money within 4 hours.
Yeah, that's great news. About like what you were saying earlier, it seems like a lot of these digital threats, they can quickly turn into very real physical threats as well, like people coming to your office. In some cases, like Arif was sharing, there are cases also in Indonesia and in the Philippines as well, where journalists have been killed in the line of duty. So I'm going to start with Maria. How do you deal with all this? Like it's so hard to imagine, right? For people probably who are not in the industry, how do you deal with this type of stress on a personal level, and how do you deal with these threats on an organizational level as well? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I gotta learn to do this. I mean, it's been more than a year, right? So I'll start personally and then go organizationally. I'm old. That's one. I've been there. I was there in the fall of Suharto. I was there in 1999 when Malaysiakini was first stormed, right? I mean, it came at a time when I was already, these attacks came, this is my 35th year as a journalist this year. And I know why I do what I do. I am from both worlds. That's also the other part. I think that my government forgot that, most of my career I spent with CNN, which meant my former colleagues are still journalists coping with what we are dealing with globally. So personally, I knew who I was, why I was doing what I was doing. We had created Rappler, and it came down to, here's the line, and when it matters, are you going to hold the line? And for me, we didn't even really think about it. It was the only option to take. Like with Stephen, it was the only option to take. I was there when Tempo first came back, so there's so many things in our region that number one, I was old. Number two, I had a great team that, actually adversity becomes us, in the sense that when you're under attack by the government, the mission of journalism becomes even more important. And a lot of the friction of a normal news operation fades away, because everyone knows this time is important. I think every journalist around the world feels this right now, right? And then I think the third part, organizationally, we came together and we held the line. The last part, I think, is that the first battle you need to fight is in your mind. And when you do it with people you respect and trust, who will not abandon you, that's also very important. The Tempo's been around much longer. Malaysiakini has been around much longer. So you have no other choice but to do what you do, and it's actually, the purpose is very clear. So we know that what we do is important and it matters. And that's not just for ourselves, for our society. We have elections coming up in May 2022. Our research into what is going on in social media actually came out of terrorism research. That was also the other part, right? The two biggest stories in my life were the 9/11 attacks. I was in Jakarta on a treadmill when the World Trade Center towers, when the planes crashed into them. And to me, it was a memory because it was in an interrogation reports of probably the first pilot that was recruited by a group that would later be called Al-Qaeda. He was arrested in the Philippines in 1995. So there was that. The Philippines was a testing ground for the hijackers, for Al-Qaeda. They tested airport security and our airport security because we use the same systems as America, apparently. And then now at the tail end of my career, it is disinformation. It's this much more insidious attack, but I think about it like terrorist attacks because it attacks each of us at a personal level and creates new behavior, emergent behavior is what I call it. So last, long answer. I think the last part is you have to know your purpose. You have to be with a group of journalists, and all of us are independent journalists whose missions have been very clear. And then the most important part is whatever it is you're most afraid of, you have to embrace it. And I say this isn't a book I'm writing, embrace your fear, because that goes back to, if you can think of the worst case scenario and then plan for it, everything else is okay, right? Like when Stephen went to court, he already kind of knew. And so I think actually the first time you went to court, there was no verdict. You were sent back home, right?
Yes, that's right.
That's even harder. Actually when you come under attack, it's actually easier because then it's in the open. It's the kind of insidious manipulation where you're not sure what exactly is happening that's harder.
Yeah, on that note, maybe over to Stephen as well. How do you cope and how does your organization cope with this?
For me personally, it was, I wouldn't say it was easy, but I sort of accepted my fate. The fact that when I went into setting up Malaysiakini, I knew for sure that we're going to be, to be attacked, harassed, arrested and all that. So I came into a situation, in 1999, you have a strong man in power, Dr. Mahathir, in his first stint as PM at that time. So knowing him and knowing the media landscape in Malaysia, we knew for sure that we are inviting trouble. So I went in with my eyes wide open, knowing that this is what we are going to expect, and we should prepare for that. And in fact, when I hire journalists to come on board of Malaysiakini, I explained that this is what they're going to face, and whether they are willing to do that and whether they're prepared for that. If they are, then please join Malaysiakini. So I think that we want to make sure that they are all on board, knowing that this is what. So in a sense, not just doing journalism, but also being aware that you are going to be harassed, and you have to be aggressive, not exactly aggressive, but you have to be firm, and you have to, as what Maria said, hold the line. So I think that's important. I was watching. I enjoy the documentary. I really, what really, perhaps not, perhaps it doesn't make much impression to other viewers, but for me personally, I enjoy watching Maria talking to her journalists, and I think that the rapport that she has, and especially also you can see the determination and the fact that the journalists and editors there were just as determined and just as fearless, so to speak, in the face of the kind of harassment that they are facing. So I think it was important, I think, to see that, to have that, the to have that relationship with your journalists. Make sure that they are, they are kept up to speed. They are in the loop so that they know that this is what is happening to not just to Maria but to everybody as well. And through that, hopefully, they will be able to fight this together, and it's not just Maria that's fighting it.
Yeah, thanks for that. And now over to Arif. After this, we're going to open up to the Q&A. So if you have any questions, I see some in the chat already, please feel free to put them in the chat now. But I'm going to ask Arif first. What can the people, what can the general public do to help defend press freedom? Oh, Arif, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I think it should be start from the media, from the journalists. Of course, we have to hand in hand with the public. For example, in Tempo, we have the business model that give the opportunity for public to support by subscribes and so on and so forth. But whenever the attack is coming, I think the main victim is the media. So the media should do something first. And I think we have to have a collaboration. That's the key word. Collaboration with the social media activists, collaboration with the academician, the activists, the demonstrators, for example, and also the social media analysts. In the case of when Tempo was attacked by doxing and so on and so forth, attacking in social media, we collaborate with the group of people who's expert in social media, and they can help us in mapping out who is the attackers. Are there the real account, or are there a bot, or who is their affiliation, and so on and so forth. And then we publish that. Of course, it takes time, maybe 1 or 2 weeks after the attacks coming. But by revealing the mapping, I think the attackers will think twice to attack again. Of course, they can change the name and so on and so forth, but the public knows who's behind them, short of. Yeah. And also, the most important thing as well is we have to believe, at least in Indonesia, I don't want to compare with other countries, that the government or the state or any kind of branch of government is not something vivid and solid. They have frictions among them. So the journalists should be playing around. We have to surf amongst or and between the waves. So when we attack by a certain kind of branch of the government, a certain kind of say department or ministry, we have to find the other way around. So we have to find another sources in the government that support us. And it's also happened in the police, and also it happened in the military and so on and so forth. So I think in this kind of situation, that then when the press freedom is fragile, we were needed not only to become a good journalist in terms producing a good news by obey the ethics and investigate, going deeper and so on and so forth, but we have to know who is our enemies between groups, so we can play among them. That's Ian.
Great, thank you so much. I think we're gonna go over to questions from the audience now. And I also know Maria's back, but you can answer that question, take that question a bit later as well, because I know both Maria and Stephen, there is like concrete ways that the public can support your organizations. I know there's a really cool thing. I've just heard it in passing, but Rappler Plus, I believe. We'd love to hear more about that in a bit. But yeah, now we're gonna go to questions from the public. I see some in the chat already. I'm just gonna load something here where I can see the questions. And if you are on Facebook, watching this on Facebook or any other platforms, feel free to put it in the chat. We have people monitoring it, and they'll pass the questions on to me. So first, we have a question here from Tan Cho Chan. What are your views on tech companies putting money in to support journalism initiatives when they are the platforms enabling disinformation? How should we view such funding? That's a great question. it doesn't mention who this is directed to, so maybe we can start with Maria.
I am so very sorry. I got yanked into a newsroom problem. So I will follow Stephen and I will put my head together. I'm back. I finished it right as you called me. So my apologies. Could you please repeat the question?
Oh, no worries. I tell you what, I'm gonna pass this over to Stephen first. What are your views on tech companies putting money into journalism initiatives when they are the ones obviously kind of behind a lot of the issues that we're actually undergoing? So Stephen?
I think the best way for tech companies to to help journalism is basically to ensure that the advertising that they are earning should be shared fairly with media organization. That would be one thing, because right now they are taking a lion's share of the advertising income. So I think that would be the main thing. I don't see that happening. There's pressure on them, definitely. Some of the governments in, say, in France and elsewhere are putting pressure on them, in Australia as well. So I think we'll see. But there should be a concerted effort by all governments and everyone to ensure that the money that they earn is actually be shared. So that's beside the point. I think given that's definitely for them, whether it's Facebook, Google, or whatever, it is a PR exercise. I think they set up a few foundations to help out the media organizations, since that they're suffering already, mostly because of their fault, the fact that they are sucking up all the advertising instead of sharing that. So I think in a situation like that, it is really hard for you to say that, look, we won't take your money. I think there are times where they are the trainings that is funded through by them can be valuable for us. The technology that they provide could help us, especially when it comes to Malaysiakini. We are, while we are in the subscription business, but there's still a lot of things that we can do to improve that. And I don't think we are in a situation where we can do it ourselves. So and that whatever help that we can get, especially in terms of some of the solutions that's been found, that's been discovered by, say, for instance, New York Times, and all that can be helpful for us. Yeah. So I think that is something that we welcome.
Yeah, I've always wondered this as well, because I think from someone who doesn't know the industry, when they hear journalists say things like that, like, oh, the social media companies should give us a share, a lot of people feels like, oh, you journalists is like a bunch of sour grapes, right? Like, why don't you change your revenue model? So Maria, how would you respond to something like that?
Oh my God. I mean, so look, I upfront, I'm part of 2-3 groups that are trying to deal with this, right? The first global groups. I mean, the first is the Forum on Information and Democracy, which is a group of people to try to come together to look at the principles, right? In November last year, we came up with strategic solutions. Instead of playing whack-a-mole the way the platforms have been doing, you, as the whistleblower said in front of the US Senate Tuesday night, you find a systemic solution, meaning it is by design that we are being divided and we are being radicalized, because it keeps people on site. Anger and hate and conspiracy theories, disinformation spreads faster, but keeps us scrolling, right? So the manipulation that is allowed today should not be allowed. Surveillance capitalism, which is what Stephen talked about, the business model that mines our personal data. The more I learn about it, the more I really do think this should be illegal. So the first is that we're all learning what this is. We're studying it academically. We're looking at the data and we're coming up with solutions. The second is that we're also trying to push for legislation. In 2016, I would have said, let the tech platforms regulate themselves the way journalists do. But guess what? They're not journalists. Journalists protect the public sphere. When we lost our gatekeeping powers to tech platforms, they took the money that came with it, but they like said, let all hell break loose. Sorry, I didn't mean to, they basically abdicated the responsibility that we spend our lives and our careers learning about. So regulation, and there are two that you should be looking at. The first is the EU, the European Democracy Action Plan. That'll probably be the earliest to come out, but not early enough for our elections. And then the second is Section 230 in the United States. The third part, and this is even harder, right? The third part is what the tech platforms, because everything moved to the internet, what they have done to news. And what I mean by that is, think about it like this. When you go on digital, we are now forced to commoditize journalism. And independent journalism, the kind that we do, is not only expensive, it takes time. And then it's reduced to a page view, and I go back to like the way Gawker, the old Gawker, used to, put the board, and then we're lumped in with content creators who caters to the worst of human nature to be able to play to the algorithms so they become influencers. We don't want to be influencers. We want to give you the facts. And guess what? Facts are really boring. We spend our careers trying to to make you care. So so look, our problem is that the world is not going to go right side up until regulations are in place, the insidious manipulation of people all around the world stops, because that is what is exploited by governments. It weakens facts. Without facts, you can't have truth. You can't have trust. You heard me say this. I say this all the time now. Those things I said in the film, I feel like a broken record. I feel like Sisyphus rolling the rock up the hill, and we're still rolling the rock up the hill.
Yeah, and now with COVID-19, I think that set the battle for press freedom even further back. So Arif, do you think COVID-19? This is a question from Rosemary on Zoom. How far has it set us back? How much has it hampered existing issues of independent journalists and contributed to the decline of press freedom? Thanks, Rose, for that question.
Yeah, I think the COVID-19 is a momentum for journalists to prove themselves that they are useful for the societies. I think in Indonesia, for example, something that's very important is the government fights against the hoax toward the COVID-19, and also about vaccination, for example. That was believed by thousands or millions of people, especially in the rural areas. For example, the hoax that's saying that if you are vaccinated, the government put the chip in your bodies by putting the chip on the nails and in the vaccination process. So we trying to fight against that kind of hoax, and also we also criticize the government how they handled the COVID-19 process. In Indonesia, we have the old Minister of Health, which didn't believe the COVID-19 is a common disease. It can be healed naturally, and so on and so forth. And it is not easy for us to convince the president to take another ministry, because it's almost 1 year after the beginning of 2020, when the pandemic was coming. And then after that, after again and again, we convinced the president and the government about how important to change the ministry. The ministerial is changed by the new one that is very good professionals. And I think the vaccination rate in Indonesia is one of the highest in the region, even in the world. So in that sense, the journalism can prove themselves. They can work very good. They can work very serious. But of course, that the implication to the business. I think I should say, I'm so sorry that the problem in Indonesia of faking news and clickbait is about the business models, because almost all the digital newsroom, digital news portal in Indonesia is playing in the business models that is the free news, and then they seeking for traffic and so on and so forth. And then so from times to times we are fighting against the bad quality of journalism. I'm the member of the press councils in Jakarta, and I chair the division of ethics. And I think it's about 900 report from the public to the media a years. Is 95% is consists of that kind of complaint. A bad quality journalism, the title was bombastic, and so on and so forth. So basically, it is coming from the business model. So in Tempo, we're trying to change that, even though it's not easy, by using the business model subscription base. So people have to pay a very low price in Tempo, so they can support Tempo for the press freedom, for the good quality journalism process, and so on.
Okay. And I think that's something that both Rappler and Malaysiakini are doing as well. Maybe we can start with Stephen. Like Malaysiakini has long had a subscription model, and has that improved? Because I think a lot of people that I've spoken to, they think, oh, COVID-19 should be good for media, right? Everybody needs to go to the media somehow, yet they still think it's fake news. They still think COVID isn't real, whatever that may be. And a lot of people seem to think that this is a time for the media to shine. But has that been the case for you, and how has that affected your subscription model?
Well, I think COVID-19 has definitely affected the way we work. All of us have to work from home. Some of our journalists had to take precaution when they go out. So we still continue to do our work despite when in a situation when everybody else is under lockdown. So I think it's something that I think a lot of people appreciate. In some ways, we are essential workers. We are trying very much to provide, the citizens about what is happening, and about the latest on the COVID front, and some of the precautions that they should be taking, some of the facts about about COVID and all that. So I think that's important, and because a lot of them are staying at home, they have a lot more time to read, and to some of them are being watched Netflix or something like that. But thankfully, quite a number of them are also following news. So our subscription has actually gone up. So I think that's a blessing in disguise in some ways for us. So last year and this year has been good in terms of subscription. We hope that will continue. But definitely, I think looking ahead, we'll be looking at a situation where I don't think we would be going back to a pre-COVID days when it comes to the way we work. And we have learned a lot over the past 1.5 years, and definitely we will be seeing how we can actually improve ourselves in ensuring that we continue to remain productive despite the fact that we are not in the office, and ensure that the public will continue to get news from us.
Thanks. And how about you, Maria? How's the pandemic affected Rappler, and in terms of subscription as well? There is a question here as well about subscription models from Kian Wong. is it time to consider a shared revenue model, a networked subscription model? That's interesting. Sorry, I've never thought about it before. I don't know if you have, but go ahead.
So I really love that idea. I feel like, the subscription is like our finger in the dam to try to, this thing is coming to crush us. And here's my thing. I actually used to, when we first started Rappler, I went to Steven and I think it was Prem who I was talking to about subscription, right? And it's always this balance. When you have a subscription model, it means that other people will not get your news, right? So in our countries, the information is so important for the people who cannot afford it. And so that's part of what we've struggled with. But let me move beyond where we are right now. I do think that we are going to be forced to find new tech. That's one, because the distribution of news has got to get out of the algorithmic model that rewards lies. That's the first. And then the second one is that, oh gosh, I am so sorry. I'll just finish that one and then I do need to take the call. So the second one is that tech and journalism is going to come together. And the third part connected to that is that our communities are going to have to demand better. That's the other part. So we actually are going to need to build collaboration up. I'm looking forward to working much more closely because the battle is no longer among news groups. The battle is actually against lies. And that's going to be the next 3 to 4 years.
No worry, Maria. So yeah, I think that's going to be something we'll be discussing later on as well. Like was mentioned earlier, we're going to have a session where we're going to discuss what we can do together, how we can collaborate across all the different people who are here today, whether you're at civil society, whether you're an activist, or whether you're a journalist or newsroom. We're going to talk about that soon. I have a question here for Stephen and Maria as well, if she can join us again. Stephen, this question is from Lantia from Indonesia. Who's a filmmaker. You're in a job where many times your life is in danger potentially, and similar to a lot of filmmakers. So how do you ensure safety for yourself and I suppose for your journalists as well?
Very good question. I think it's something that we are very much aware of. But I think in Malaysia, thankfully, our society is not as we didn't have the same history when it comes to situation, the political situation, when compared to, say, for instance, Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand. They have gone through military coups after coups, and Malaysia, relatively speaking, the society is not brutalized to that extent. So I think not to say that we don't face the kind of violence threat, but at least relatively speaking, I think our colleagues in other countries in this region are facing much tougher situation than us. It's something that I always encourage our journalists to say, hey, look, you think you're actually facing problems just because of police raiding our office, or you have a group of thugs who are protesting outside your office. This is almost nothing when you compare to our colleagues in Indonesia or Thailand or Philippines. They are facing that they are facing. So I think in that way, it's not to say that the situation here is better, but it's just for us to have a sense of balance in terms of what we are facing. So yeah, in that sense, I think we do take precaution all the time. I think being aware of our environment. When you go out, making sure that if there is a situation where you expect to be in a situation where there could be perhaps violence or anything of that kind, You just need to be aware of the people that are surrounding you, and of course, at the end of the day, make sure that you're not alone. I think it's important that you know all of our journalists are aware that they are supported by the organization, they're supported by the colleagues who are working there. So I think that is important, so that you're not facing it alone. So I think that is something that we want to ensure that it's dumping into our journalists.
And I suppose also I think we need to take up Maria. I'm assuming she left because she has to record a statement or something, because she has just been announced as a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize.
Wow!
So,
congratulations!
Yeah, I think she's still processing that information.
Wow!
So
wow, amazing!
Very well deserved. So maybe all of us, can you join me? Please unmute yourselves and give her a round of applause, please, everybody.
We are really, really happy for you, Maria.
Well done.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna have to make do without Maria for a while, because obviously it's a very momentous occasion. We can continue the conversation. We still have a lot of questions, so keep them coming. I think that question as well to Arif. I know, sorry, Arif, this is gonna be a tough question for you to.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think we're.
Sorry, it's noisy.
Oh, no worries, sorry. So Arif, I think maybe you can take that question as well. I know Lamtiar had addressed it to Maria and Stephen, but in terms of journalist safety for people at Tempo, what are some of the steps you take in order to keep your people safe?
Of course, we have procedures, a standard of procedures. For example, when mostly the journalists of Tempo that was threatened, they live outside Jakarta or outside Java, because so when it happened, we can take them to Jakarta in the safe house. It's also happened when Nur Hadi, one of Tempo journalists that I've told you before, in Surabaya, we take to Jakarta. And also another stories that our journalists, for example, in Papua, that was threatened, we take to Jakarta, and we replace him from someone who's coming from Jakarta to Papua to Surabaya, and so on and so forth. Of course, the capacity, the knowledge of the journalist who's coming from Jakarta to Papua, for example, is not as good as the journalist that was taken away. But at least that's the way we protect them. We protect them, and it's funny because in one stories that we produce about the garbage dam in Surabaya, the problem of garbage in Surabaya that was supported by a little branch of the military in Surabaya, and then the journalist was threatened by that body, and then we rescue them to Jakarta, and then the other army in Jakarta give a protection. That's funny actually. Yeah, so that's giving the pictures that what I've told you before, that the government in any kind of brands is not valid, it's not vivid, it's not solid. So there is a kind of friction among them. So we use that. Thank you, Ian.
Oh, that's brilliant. But in that sense, that is a huge sacrifice as well, right? For your journalists to have to uproot, to have to leave wherever they were reporting to go to Jakarta. And in terms of long-term security, that must be a huge challenge. So what motivates them? How do you keep that going?
What is the motivation of the journalists?
And how does that affect your journalists, number one? And where do they find that motivation to keep going in the face of this uncertainty in their careers?
I don't know. I think that's because I believe that they're very proud to become the part of the fact finding and truth finding, something like Maria told us before. So we are 100% protecting our journalists in any kind of ways.
Fantastic. At this point, I
Can I,
know
can
that
I just jump in
Sure,
a
go
little
ahead.
bit about that? I think, in fact, there are organizations that are helping to train journalists when it comes to how to deal with violent situation, especially when it comes to demonstration or when it comes to a war situation or whatever. So I think it is good for journalists to undergo that kind of training. Often, they would tell you where to position yourself, especially in a situation where things are getting out of control, in a situation where the crowd is getting rowdy. In what situation will you have to wear the helmets or other protective say for instance bulletproof vests or something like that. So it's great. So I think it is something that all journalists who face that kind of situation should be trained.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I do see that there are still a lot of questions on my list that have come in from Zoom, from Facebook, and everywhere else. A lot of them directed to Maria, and I think there'll be plenty more from Maria, especially after this historic honor from Maria. Are you back with us, Maria? Are you okay? Are you available to say something? Could this be your acceptance speech or something?
This is for all of us. Oh my God. I am in shock, but I actually see, I mean, I actually, sorry. I think it's a recognition of how tough it is. See, I don't cry. This is, okay, wait, 2 seconds. So this is a recognition of how hard it is to be a journalist today, how hard it is to keep doing what we do, right? So thank you to the Nobel Prize Committee. I share it with a Russian journalist, and it's a recognition of the difficulties, but also hopefully of how we're going to win the battle for truth, the battle for facts. We hold the line.
Thank you so much, Maria. I think this is an incredible inspiration to all of us. And hopefully we will do this award justice as well, because we are going to work together. We are going to, later in this session, talk about ways that we can move forward. And I think this is definitely going to spur us on even further. And also,
can I just jump in?
Sure.
I'm sorry, Ian. I just would like to congratulate Maria. I think, it's just this win is not just for Maria alone. I think it will inspire all journalists. Because this prize is actually going to, definitely journalists like Maria and all that, but I think, journalists elsewhere should also be inspired that we should continue this struggle for facts. That's really, really important. Yeah.
And I'm not sure, Maria, if you heard the applause for you just now, but once again, can everybody please unmute and give a round of applause to Maria Ressa, everyone. Nobel Peace Prize winner.
Congratulations.
Fighting.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, everybody. On that note, I think, Maria, I think you might have to leave us very soon. So just in case, I wanted to just one question from you. What is your hope for journalism in Southeast Asia?
I think journalism in Southeast Asia, when I moved to the Philippines in 1986, it was right on the heels of people power. I watched all of our countries, we're going through a dark time, a difficult time, but I hope that that we hold the line, that we realize that what we do today is going to determine what our tomorrow is going to be, and that this gives us more power to us, right? This is, I'm in shock, but we have huge problems to fix. We've laid out some of them there. I think this just shows you that others recognize, the Everest we have to climb. But I think we can do it together, and I'm really looking forward to working with all of you.
Thank you so much, Maria. Plenty of wonderful messages for you in the chat. I hope you have time to read some of them. Clearly, you've inspired a lot of people. And we don't get you back after this, I think we're also having some connection issues. Thank you so much for being here. I want to go quickly right now into like what you were saying, into working together into solutions, right? So I do see a lot more questions. Hopefully we can take them later on. But this is our final session today, which is action planning. So my organization, The Fourth, we believe in solutions-driven journalism, and we run social impact campaigns. So when the organizers, Freedom Film Network, and everybody brought us into this, we thought it would be good to have an impact element as well. So the idea came about, the idea we settled on was to have a multi-stakeholder coalition with all the media organizations that are represented here, the civil society organizations and activists. So this coalition is going to collaborate on initiatives that would defend press freedom. So if this is something that you'd like to be involved in, we are going to email you guys once again. And we're going to have a convening at some point where we'll discuss just on this, on what kind of initiatives that this coalition can undertake and what this coalition should look like in the first place. So we're going to have an email address that's going to be in the chat. So please get in touch with us. But of course, we want this to be a collaborative process. We don't want to come up with ideas that just benefit a minority of us. So we're going to open it up to the speakers and also to everybody else, what you guys think a coalition like this should look like and what should we do. So first of all, we can start with Stephen. How can we better collaborate to defend press freedom, to end these types of attacks against journalism?
Malaysiakini was actually started with the help of the Southeast Asian Press Alliance. It's based in Bangkok. It's an alliance of all the different journalist organizations in the region, including AJI in Indonesia and the Federation of Journalists in Thailand, as well as in the Philippines and all that. So I think we are definitely we get help from them, and I think it is important for organizations like that to also continue to help independent media in the region. And unfortunately, Southeast Asia Press Alliance, SIPA, is no longer in existence. And I think, perhaps we can revive, an organization, something similar to that, to continue to help support independent media across the region. So I think that's one thing. And I think, because the other thing is that, it's not just journalists, but also everybody else who are not a journalist. It's important for us to make it our duty to discuss, the burning issues with our friends, with our family members, workmates, people that we meet. We should make it our duty to counter hate speech, wherever and whenever they emerge. Because if we don't, other people are doing it. There are those who do not believe in that our country should be an inclusive society. Those who do not believe that we should take care of the environment, those who do not believe that we should respect human rights. And I think that is important, that each and every one of us should also internalize and actually do. It's not just supporting media organization. So I think if we don't counter these people out there, the trolls and all that, we allow them to take over the narrative and make it their own. And I think we must not let them dominate our national discussion. And that is really, really important. So I think, and to do that, you need facts. And therefore, to get facts, you have to support the independent media, because we are the ones, and of course, not the only ones, but out of the many, we are committed to actually providing facts to the people.
Over to you, Maria. How can we better collaborate to end media oppression in the region?
So first, I will say, I meant to say this. So let's first talk business model, right? How is independent media going to survive during this time period? So the International Fund for Public Interest Media, as I just accepted a co-chair with Mark Thompson, who was the former CEO of New York Times, for longtime BBC. And one of the things we will try to do is to raise a significant amount for public interest media particularly for countries like ours, right? Because we need it. That we need to fill that gap in, and that's going to be so. That's separate. I think the other thing is there are three things that we need to do. The three pillars of Rappler is what I wind up calling them, right? So the first is technology. So we're continuing to build tech. We need to work together to build these communities. That's the second. I am so sorry, I'm getting clobbered a little bit here. And then the third part is how do we help journalism survive? I'm looking forward. We have worked with both Malaysiakini and Tempo, and I'm looking forward to find ways, because we're going to have to be extremely creative, but maintain the standards and ethics and the mission of journalism. We cannot be monsters to fight monsters, because we are fighting monsters. So, and I guess the last part is communities. Our communities, like I've worked and lived in all of our countries, and I feel like oftentimes we emphasize the differences in our countries, but what you really realize, given that these Silicon Valley companies have proven to us that we, regardless of nation states and cultures, we actually have a lot more in common than we have differences. And so I'm hoping that will allow us to, we're going to have to reimagine a new model for journalism, a new model for community, something more inclusive. I think this is a moment like 1945, like post Hiroshima. How do we rebuild? What are we going to create? And that's very exciting. We must do that with our communities.
Thank you so much. And maybe this question would be for Arif. A lot of the collaborations we've seen to try to push back against media oppression, a lot of them have struggled, especially in our region. Why do you think that's the case? What are the realities that people are facing in terms of getting these collaborations off the ground and to make them more effective? Because obviously, it's still happening, right, in all our countries.
Yeah, we have the first one is we have to admit that the media is not amongst the media. There is also some kind of friction and something like that. So we have to reconcile that. We have to reconcile that by using the one principle that if the press freedom is collapsed, any kind of model business, any kind of what we dream about is gone. So we have to sit together. We have to talk together how to within the countries and then amongst another countries, we have to collaborate. So the other things that I want to edit what was saying by Stephen and also Maria is the collaboration between press councils, because not all of the country in Southeast Asia have a press councils or have a strong press council. It's a various, but we have to strengthen, talk together, support each other's. The ideas, the logic that we have to use, how we handle the protest, how we handle the police, the government, and so on and so forth. So. And the organization is already erect. There is an organization named the Coalition of Asian Press Council, Southeast Asia Press Council, or something like that. So I think we can use that organization, that body.
All right, thank you so much for that. I think that's pretty much it in terms of the ideas that we have and what we wanted to do with the coalition. I just Anna has from Freedom Film Network has just dropped the email there in the chat. If that's something that you're interested in, that you want to work together with us on, please send us an email. And hopefully by the end of the month, we'll be able to organize a convening where we can discuss this more in depth. But obviously today we're here to hear much more from Maria. I just wanted to get that out of the way. There's still a whole bunch of questions for you here. Do we still have time, Maria?
Yes, I'll answer our last one if it's okay. I'm getting torn in a few different directions. So,
okay.
Yes.
Sure. In that case, can I ask you one last question then? What does this, like the Nobel Peace Prize, what does this mean for journalism across the world?
I joke that we have a little flashlight in Rappler and that Amal Clooney has Klieg lights. The Nobel Peace Prize is, it will shine the light on what journalists are going through. And hopefully that means that there will be more of a concerted effort to deal with the things we talked about, right? Legislation, to stop the manipulation, the insidious manipulation of people, to help the distribution of news, to fight for facts, and then to help independent media survive this time period as we transition, and then to help communities. I love the idea of the community that you want to build, because we need to do that. Otherwise, especially with COVID and the lockdowns, people feel isolated, manipulated, because they are manipulated if they're on social media. This is Nobel Prize for journalists. That will be helpful to us because we have a lot of work to do.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you for your time and for everything you have done for the industry, for the profession. Please go
Big
ahead.
hugs, guys.
It's going to
Big
be a
hugs.
very, very busy day for you. All the best.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care,
you so
Maria.
much.
All the best.
Everybody,
Bye.
one last applause for Maria
Bye.
Ressa.
Well done.
Congratulations once again.
Well done. Maraming salamat.
Congrats, Maria.
Thank you.
Selamat, Maria.
Bye.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, ma'am.
Man, I don't know where we go from there,
Ma'am,
but
thank you.
that is amazing. That is amazing for journalism, and yeah. So I'm at a loss for words. But anyway, I think what we're gonna do now is that's pretty much the time we have. I want to thank really the Freedom Film Network for making this happen. Fantastic timing. It's like perfect for us to be able to spotlight this.
Yes.
Just try to get a bit of like residual kind of glow from this amazing honor. So I want to thank Freedom Film Network and all the amazing partners. But before we end, so in Malaysia, we have this thing called the mamak culture, where we have this mamak shops, which are Malaysian Indian cuisine, very affordable, very accessible. So after every event, pretty much you'll go to a mamak shop, you'll have tea where you continue chatting and unpacking, whatever you've spoken about all the way like past midnight. So we'd like to be able to do the same for this event as well. I think we're going to be stopping the live stream on different platforms very soon. But those of you who are here on Zoom, feel free to unmute and talk and have conversations. And what we're also going to do is we're opening up breakout rooms as well. So if anybody wants to have a side chat, or you want to speak to Stephen or to Arif, please feel free to do so. And I'm going to be in breakout room 1 in case anybody wants to come and give some ideas about the coalition that we're talking about. So yeah, that's pretty much it from us. Again, thank you all so much for being here. So yeah, stay safe and have a great rest of the day.